year ago here, you said the Chinese were catching up a bit. Do you think now the Chinese have fallen behind?
You know, I think they never really caught up that much. So, you know, of course, there was this huge excitement around DeepSeek, right? But, you know, the truth was a couple things. One, you know, those models are very optimized for the benchmarks. It's actually very easy to optimize a model for a finite list of benchmarks. When we go out into the world, right? When we're you know, competing against other companies for enterprise contracts, we see, just honestly and candidly, we see Google and we see OpenAI. Every once in a while, we see a couple other US players. I have almost never lost a deal, lost a contract to a Chinese model.
But now you have the Trump administration, and I think you've already protested about this, giving high-speed chips, NVIDIA chips to the Chinese.
That's right, that's right. The thing that is holding them back, and they've said it themselves, the CEOs of these companies say it's the embargo on chips that's holding us back. They explicitly say this. And now, indeed, you know, there are some policies, and I hope they change their mind, to, you know, to explicitly send not quite our latest generation of chips, although it was reported that even that was being considered, but, you know, the generation of chips that's just one back, that's still extremely powerful. And we are many years ahead of China in terms of our ability to make chips. So I think it would be a big mistake to ship these chips. You know, the analogy I thought of, if you think about the incredible national security implications of building models that are essentially cognition, that are essentially intelligence, right? I've called where we're going with this a country of geniuses in a data center, right? So imagine 100 million people smarter than any Nobel Prize winner, and it's going to be under the control of one country or another. So I think this is crazy. I think it's, you know, it's a bit like, you know, I don't know, like selling you know, nuclear weapons to North Korea and, you know, bragging, oh yeah, Boeing made the case.
So your friend David Sachs is basically arming the Chinese.
You know, I wouldn't refer to any particular people, but you know, I would just say that this particular policy, I think, is you know,
akin to
is not well advised.
Dario, let's turn to this now, because one thing since we last spoke in Paris, the geopolitical environment has, if anything, I don't know, complicated, mad, crazy, whatever phrase you want to use. Secondly, the US has a very different approach now towards China. It's a much more, it's a kind of no holds barred, go as fast as we can, but then sell chips to China. And that is it. So you've got a different attitude towards the United States. You've got a very strange relationship between the United States and Europe right now, geopolitically. Against that, I mean, I hear you talk about it would be nice to have a CERN-like organization. I mean, it's a million years from where we are, from the real world. So in the real world, have the geopolitical risks increased? And what, if anything, do you think should be done about that? And the administration seems to be doing the opposite of what you were suggesting.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, we're just trying to do the best we can to, you know, we're just one company, and we're trying to operate in, you know, the environment that exists, no matter how crazy it is. But, you know, I think at least my policy recommendations haven't changed. That, you know, not selling chips is one of the biggest things we can do to, you know, make sure that we have the time to handle this. You know, I said before, you know, I prefer Demis's timeline. I wish we had 5 to 10 years, you know, so it's possible he's just right and I'm just wrong, but assume I'm right and it can be done in 1 to 2 years. Why can't we slow down to Demis's timeline?
Well, you could just slow down.
Well, no, but the reason we can't do that is you know, because we have geopolitical adversaries building the same technology at a similar pace. It's very hard to have an enforceable agreement where they slow down and we slow down. And so if we can just not sell the chips, then this isn't a question of competition between the US and China. This is a question of competition between me and Demis, which I'm very confident that we can work out.
Mm-hmm. And what do you make of the logic of the administration, which, as I understand it, is we need to sell them chips because we need to bind them into US supply chains?
So, you know, I think it's a question not just of time scale, but of the significance of the technology, right? If this was telecom or something, then all this stuff about proliferating the U.S. stack and, you know, wanting to build our, you know, chips around the world to make sure that, these random countries in different parts of the world, you know, build data centers that have NVIDIA chips instead of Huawei chips. You know, I think of this more as like, you know, it's a decision. Are we going to, you know, sell nuclear weapons to North Korea, and you know, because that produces some profit for Boeing, you know, where we can say, okay, yeah, these cases were made by Boeing, like the U.S. is winning, like this is great. Like I just, you know, that analogy should just make clear how I see this trade-off, that I just don't think it makes sense. And we've done a lot of more aggressive stuff, towards China and other players that I think is much less effective than this one measure.
A year ago, DeepSeek seemed cataclysmic for the West. Now, a year later, it's quiet. China seems to have been quieter.
Yes.
Has your opinion on competition from China changed?
Not really. I mean, I didn't think it was cataclysmic in the first place. I think it was a massive overreaction. In the West, it was impressive. And I think it shows that the Chinese are very capable, the leading companies. I think companies like ByteDance actually, I would say, are the most capable. And they're maybe only 6 months behind, not 1 or 2 years behind the frontier. So I think that's what DeepSeek showed. Some of the claims were over-exaggerated about, you know, the amount of compute they used and being so minimal and so on, because they relied on some Western models and also fine-tuning on the outputs of some of the leading Western models. So it wasn't sort of de novo. And the other thing I think so far is not, you know, yet to be seen is, can China actually, the Chinese companies innovate beyond the frontier themselves? So they're gaining, they're very good at kind of catching up to where the frontier is and increasingly capable at that. But I think they've yet to show they can innovate beyond the frontier.
China's not out this game, right?
Not at all. And actually, you know, I think they are closer to the US US and West frontier models than maybe we thought 1 or 2 years ago. Maybe they're only a matter of months behind at this point. The interesting thing is, and they have from very capable teams, of course, like the DeepSeek team and Alibaba you mentioned. The question is can they innovate something new beyond the frontier? So I think they've shown they can catch up, you know, and be very close to the frontier and catch up very quickly. But can they actually innovate something new, like a new Transformers, that gets beyond the frontier? I don't think that's been shown yet.
Is that going to be, in your view, difficult because of restrictions on access to technology, like leading edge chips, for example?
No, I think it's more a mentality issue, you know, so I think it's something that at least the leading labs, the leading frontier labs in the West have nurtured, I can say, for ourselves. You know, you can think of DeepMind as a bit like try to be a modern day Bell Labs and encourage innovation and exploratory innovation, not just scaling out what's known and today. And of course, that's already very difficult because you need world-class engineering already to be able to do that. And China definitely have that. The question is the scientific innovation part. That's a lot harder to invent something is about 100 times harder than it is to copy it. So the question, that's the next frontier really is, and I haven't seen evidence of that yet, but it's very difficult.
With regard to the chips sold to China, there are reports that China is telling its companies don't use American or don't use West chips. Is that true?
Well, they want to favor their companies, and that's understandable. But H200 is extraordinary for the Chinese market, and there's demand for it, quite significant demand. And I hope that they'll continue to keep the market open for us. You know, the Chinese market wants to be open. They want to welcome competition. They want to welcome investment in their countries. We've been there for 30 some odd years, and we hope we can continue to serve that market.
But of course, President Trump sees this industry as a national security issue, and it is, of course, given the fact that your very important chips are used in the military. So there's a debate on whether or not China should actually be getting our chips. What's your take? You want to obviously sell to that market, but are there risks with regard to national security?
First of all, H200 are not used by their military because their military, like our military, builds on our own chips. And they build plenty of great chips. Huawei and many new startups, they've all gone public this year, hundreds of billions of dollars of market value now in building AI chips. So they have lots of AI chips for themselves. With respect to H200, we remember the AI stack is 5 layers deep. And we want to win the AI race. And we need to win the AI race at every single layer. We want to win the energy layer. We want to win the chip layer, the infrastructure layer, the AI model layer, and also the application layer. President Trump wants us to go win the marketplace, compete around the world, bring home jobs, create revenue for the United States, and continue to lead the technology around the world. We can't concede any market. And so having the ability to keep the United States at the forefront with Blackwell today and very soon Rubin, but allowing American chip companies to compete around the world, we have the benefit of having a thoughtful and balanced strategy.
And of course, one of the pillars of the AI plan out of the White House is to export American technology around the world. Is that happening right now? How can you help to ensure that that does happen, that the world is using the models of your chips, that the world is using actually American or NVIDIA type products?
We want to export American technology all over the world so that the rest of the world could build their industry on top. And of course, we have the benefit of being the foundation of the technology layer for as many countries around the world as possible. That applies to the chip layer. That also applies to the model layer, as you mentioned. These AI models are available for use all over the world. For example, OpenAI, I just heard that in China, in India, incredible usage of OpenAI in India, and that's terrific. We want to make sure that American technology is exported all over the world so that they could build their applications on top.
Jensen, let me ask you about this U.S.-China race that everyone talks about, and let me put it to you this way. For the last 3 administrations, Trump 1, Biden, and Trump 2, there's been actually a bipartisan consensus that what we should be doing is denying China high-end computing power and capacity by denying them the highest end chips. You have said that this strategy has backfired. Explain what you mean.
Because depriving someone of technology is not a goal. It's a tactic. And that tactic was not in service of the goal. The goal, of course, is that United States and China now represent a unique relationship that hasn't existed in the world for a long time. 2 incredible countries, both would like to succeed, both would love to prosper, both would love to win. We would like the United States to be the world leader. There's nothing wrong with that aspiration, and we should definitely try to achieve that and strive for that. In order for America to be the world leader, just like we want the world to be built on the American dollar, using the American dollar as a global standard, we want the American tech stack to be the global standard. We love that the internet was created by American technology and is built on American technology. And so we should continue to aspire for that. In order for us to do that, we have to be in search of all the AI developers in the world. And as it turns out, China is incredible in AI because 50% of the world's AI developers are in China and Chinese. And so our mission, properly expressed, in order for America to have AI leadership, is to make sure that the American tech stack is available to markets all over the world so that amazing developers, including the ones in China, are able to build on American tech stack so that AI runs best on the American tech stack.
But what if in doing that, you also are providing the Chinese military, with Chinese intelligence, with the capacity to supercharge, to turbocharge their weapons with the very best American chips, which are yours?
We don't have to worry about that because the Chinese military, no different than the American military, will not seek each other's technology out to be built on top of it. They simply can't rely on it. It could be, of course, limited at any time. Not to mention, there's plenty of computing capacity in China already. If you just think about the number of supercomputers that are in China, built by amazing Chinese engineers that are already in operation,
They don't need NVIDIA's chips, certainly, or American tech stacks in order to build their military.
China's growth in electricity is tremendous.
They're building 100 gigawatts of nuclear as we speak.
Actually, solar is the biggest thing in China. So I believe China's production capacity on solar is 1,500 gigawatts a year, and they're deploying over 1,000 gigawatts a year of solar. Now, for continuous solar load, you divide that by roughly, 4 or 5. Call it that's around 250 gigawatts of steady-state power paired with batteries. And that's a very big number. That's half of the average power usage in the U.S.
Right.
So U.S. power usage on average is 500 gigawatts. China, just in solar, in solar that can provide steady-state power and batteries, can do half of the U.S. electricity output per year just with solar. Solar is by far the biggest source of energy. And actually, when you look beyond, or even on Earth, but certainly beyond Earth, the sun rounds up to 100% of all energy. This is an important thing to consider. So the sun is 99.8% of the mass of the solar system. Jupiter is about 0.1%, and everything else is miscellaneous. Now, even if you were to burn Jupiter in a thermonuclear reactor, the amount of energy produced by the sun would still round up to 100%, because Jupiter is only 0.1%. If you teleported 3 more Jupiters into our solar system, and burnt 3 more Jupiters and everything else in the solar system, the sun's energy would still round up to 100%. Mm-hmm. So it's really all about the sun. And that's why one of the things we'll be doing with SpaceX within a few years is launching solar-powered AI satellites.
Right.
Because the space is really the source of immense power, and then you don't need to take up any room on Earth. There's so much room in space, and you can scale to enormous. You can scale to, I think, ultimately hundreds of terawatts a year.
China has so many power plants that have been built and are being built. I don't think people quite realize this. I posted on my X account just the graph of U.S. power generation versus China power generation. Yeah. And China power generation is looks like a rocket going to orbit, and U.S. power generation is flat.
Right.
So I think by the end of this year, China will have about 2.5 times the power output of the United States, and it's headed towards maybe 3 or 4 times the power output of the United States.
It's funny when I think about China. I mean, EVs, autonomous, we talked about batteries, solar, power generation. By the way, even biotechnology recently, I don't know if you saw, Pfizer's licensing cancer drugs.
Yeah.
They seem to be, I don't know, I'll ask you the question. Are they ahead of us in certain areas that are important?
I mean, the United States still has an advantage in breakthrough innovation, so it's the United States, and I think it's somewhat of a cultural thing, which is that to have breakthrough innovation, you have to question authority. Fundamentally, your breakthrough, you're questioning the conventional wisdom when you do a breakthrough innovation.
Right.
In China, that don't generally like to question the authority, or it's not as encouraged as it is in the U.S. Questioning authority.
But they do seem to be good at finding something and then making it better.
Yeah, I do want to emphasize that the sheer number of smart, talented people in China who work very hard is amazing. The amount of just the sheer quantity of talent. I'm an admirer of China's capabilities. I think most people outside of China do not understand the power of China. It really is something special.
If China is better at physical infrastructure, industrial scale-ups, getting more power and more data centers online. How worried are you that they might beat us here?
I mean, I think it's like a real competition.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that you're seeing the industrial policies really play out, where, yeah, I mean, I think China's bringing online more power, and because of that, I think that the U.S. really needs to focus on streamlining the ability to build data centers and build and produce energy, or I think we will be at a significant disadvantage. At the same time, I think some of the export controls on things like chips, I think you can see how they're clearly working in a way, because there was all the conversation with DeepSeek about, oh, they did all these like very impressive low-level optimizations. And the reality is they did, and that is impressive. But then you ask, why did they have to do that when none of the like American labs did it? And it's like, well, because they're using like partially nerfed chips that are the only thing that NVIDIA is allowed to sell in China because of the export controls. So DeepSeek basically had to go spend a bunch of their calories and time doing low-level infrastructure optimizations that the American labs didn't have to do. Now, they produced a good result on text, right? It's like, I mean, DeepSeek is text only. So the infrastructure is impressive. The text result is impressive. But every new major model that comes out now is multimodal, right? It's image, it's voice, and theirs isn't. And now the question is, why is that the case? I don't think it's because they're not capable of doing it. I think that they basically had to spend their calories on doing these infrastructure optimizations to overcome the fact that there were these export controls. But when you compare like Llama 4 with DeepSeek, I mean, our reasoning model isn't out yet, so I think that the kind of R1 comparison isn't clear yet. But we're basically like effectively same ballpark on all the tech stuff is what DeepSeek is doing, but with a smaller model. So it's much more kind of efficient per, the kind of cost per intelligence is lower with what we're doing for Llama on text. And then all the multimodal stuff we're effectively leading at, and it just doesn't even exist in their stuff. So I think that the Llama 4 models, when you compare them to what they're doing, are good, and I think generally people are going to prefer to use the Llama 4 models. But I think that there is this interesting contour where like it's clearly a good team that's doing stuff over there, and I think you're right to ask about the accessibility of power, the accessibility of compute and chips and things like that, because I think the kind of work that you're seeing the different labs do and play out, I think is somewhat downstream of that.